Hi, my name is Paul Glatzel and welcome to the next in this series of explainer videos. This one looking at the MCA Small Ships Navigation and Radar course. So what created the need for the MCA SSNR course? Well, as I said, it came into being in late 2023 and it was really aimed to fill a gap in the market, and it's to basically give skippers and crew operating on workboats the skills they need to be able to use their systems to the standard necessary to be able to operate commercially. So the SSNR course actually comprises 2 courses and 4 modules. The SSN course, the Small Ships Navigation course, comprises 2 modules, one on electronic charting systems and one on bridge watchkeeping. And the Small Ships Radar course comprises a course on radar and one on meteorology. The SSN course 3 days, the SSR course 2 days, and the vast majority of people do it as a 5-day block. You can choose one of the 2 or the 3-day blocks according to your particular situation and maybe pre-existing qualifications. But in our experience, particularly with those considering not doing the SSR part of things, because perhaps they don't have radar on their vessel, the reality is that can be quite limiting for a skipper, because it means when they then get on a vessel with a radar, they're not actually technically qualified to be able to helm that vessel. So the 5-day course is really where it's at for the vast majority of people coming on the course. So the course is required in a number of situations. So a workboat will nowadays typically be coded to workboat code 3, or maybe in the process of transitioning from workboat code 2. If the vessel is coded to workboat code 3, then it's a mandatory requirement for the skipper and any crew involved in navigation, which realistically on our sub 24 metre boats will be any crew we have, because we typically only tend to have 1 or 2 crew members. So any crew member involved in navigation also needs the qualification. And a workboat coded vessel could be from a rib through to a 24 metre crew transfer vessel like we're on. So there's a huge range of vessels that this could apply to. The other sector or part of the market that it applies to is actually vessels coded under currently MGN 280 or the new MGN as that comes out late in 2025. And some of those vessels will be operating with what's called a light duty workboat certificate, and that facilitates, that allows them to operate in workboat mode. So for example, MGN 280 is really aimed at vessels involved in sport and pleasure, and what we mean by that is if people are going out on the boat to have fun, a corporate entertainment day, a treasure hunt, something like that, then MGN 280 is the code to qualify under. If though the person on board is doing work, maybe water sampling, maybe photography, and they're paid to do that job, but it's a job, then that vessel is operating as a workboat. And if that's the case under MGN 280 and the subsequent MGN, then you're going to be able to be issued with a light duty workboat certificate by your certifying authority. What Workboat Code 3 says within the text is that any vessel operating with a light duty workboat certificate needs to meet the manning and training requirements of Workboat Code 3. So what that means is potentially for our 7 or 8 metre ribs doing a variety of different charter type jobs, then the skipper and potentially the crew will need to be qualified to the SSNR course. So let's look at how the SSNR course runs and what it actually covers. So it's up to the school really as to whether they run the SSN module first or they run the SSR module first, and there are different schools of thought on that, and there are pros and cons of each, frankly. What we tend to do is run the SSN course, the Small Ships Navigation element of it, and then move on to the SSR later in the week. Whichever way round it is, inevitably to be able to use the simulator that you're actually using, then you'll actually find that you're sort of crossing across the boundaries of those 2 courses within the modules that you actually cover. The Small Ships Navigation course comprises 2 modules, which is the electronic charting system using approved charts, and also a bridge watchkeeping module. Now, when it was first introduced as including the bridge watchkeeping element, I think a lot of people actually looked at that and thought, well, is that really necessary? But actually, those that actually do the course and actually then enjoy the benefit of that bridge watchkeeping module and the focus it actually gives to the responsibility of a skipper and the very broad range of responsibilities they have and how they can seek to manage and adhere to the responsibilities, find that it's actually a really powerful part of the course. The ECS part of it is focused, as you would imagine, on electronic charting systems and using what we might refer to as chart plotter type systems. And what's different is that we're using approved charts. So the charts we have in our typical leisure chart plotter type systems are non-approved charts. Within the systems that we need to use on workboat 3 coded vessels, we need to be using ENCs, electronic navigation charts, basically approved charts. And there's therefore a focus on those charts and also the methodologies around using the electronic charting system. And that's moving to a new standard, which is called SV-ECS. So the SV-ECS standard was implemented during 2025, and that stands for Small Vessel Electronic Charting Systems, and that replaced what tended to be referred to as mini ECDIS. And the SV-ECS product, or is a standard really, which manufacturers need to meet to basically be able to call their product an SV-ECS product. And there are obviously a variety of manufacturers within the sector. The one that's met that standard so far is Raymarine, and they're now in the process of implementing their product into vessels in the sub 24 metre fleet. And that's a product we've been involved in and seen, and we build into the course that we actually run, because realistically that's what the vast majority of people are going to be using short term. So the SV-ECS product and understanding what that's all about is really what is supported by the SSN course and the principles of ECDIS. And ECDIS is really that big boat navigation system. And when you do the course, what you realise is the limitations maybe of the way we've been operating with and interacting with the leisure-based, the traditional chart plotter systems that we've all been using. The SSR, or Small Ships Radar, element of the course comprises 2 modules as well, and there's the radar part of the course, and then there's meteorology. And again, I think when people first look at it, they think, do I really need to cover meteorology? I'm a yacht master offshore, or I'm advanced powerboat COC, I've already looked at weather. But there's, over the course of the module, there's a pretty deep dive into not really where weather comes from, but basically the weather-based decisions that we need to make as skippers, and particularly looking at where we should be sourcing our weather information and some of the limitations around those sources of information. And it gives you a lot of background in that respect that I think pretty much everybody comes out thinking, actually, I didn't really realise that about the apps that I was actually looking at. And it gives them a new insight in terms of the way they're making their weather-based decisions. The radar part of it, quite clearly for us, because we put the SSR after the SSN, builds on the small elements of radar that we've actually used within the first 3 days and really deep dives into radar. Yes, there's some theory in terms of background theory to radar, but it's really all about getting to grips with the use of radar for navigation and for collision avoidance, and how to set up the system and navigate in restricted visibility. At the heart of this course is a simulator. So it's a 5-day classroom course, and it's based on a simulator. And really the go-to, the simulator that is really in use around the maritime colleges and that we chose to adopt was the Wärtsilä simulator, previously known as Transas. And it's a really good system. What it allows us to do is to have both radar, plotter, and out of window views, and to set up exercises that really develop your skills and then challenge you as visibility is restricted and also systems are denied to you. And by the end of the week, you'll be surprised that you'll be sitting there in a GPS denied environment with 0 visibility, and you'll be, I'm not quite sure the word is happily, but confidently navigating through an area, plotting your position, route monitoring, in terms of where you are, and actually, being confident with your ability to do that. And that's a considerable progression as you move through the week. So what questions should you, as skipper or crew member looking to book the course, or a commercial organisation booking for a number of your staff, what questions should you be asking of the centres that you're considering training with, considering spending your money with? There's a few questions really probably to answer. First one is, what sort of organisation are they? You've got, broadly speaking, two options. Maritime colleges, the big maritime colleges we see around the UK, or you've got the centres that are really combined RYA, MCA training centres. What's the difference between the two? Well, the maritime colleges, they're really aimed at big ships. That's what their history, their provenance is, and they're set up really well to do that. They're absolutely brilliant in terms of the training they do, and the resources they have are exceptional. However, they're not aimed at the sub 24 metre market, and in our experience, quite often those teaching the courses have little to no sub 24 metre experience, and that contrasts perhaps with the RYA MCA training centres, and there are probably a handful of those around the UK, where the instructors have sub 24 metre experience. The RYA, that's their area of expertise, and therefore the instructors within those centres invariably tend to have that sub 24 metre expertise when they teach the MCA SSNR course. And that really can make an exceptional difference to the value of the course and the benefits you derive from attending that course. Other factors to consider will be the simulators in use. The MCA require their centres to be using an approved simulator, and something like the Wärtsilä Transas simulator, which is the same as what the maritime colleges used, and that's a full ECDIS simulator, and the instructor then uses that methodology, which is what's in the SVECS standard, to run the course. If you're on a simulator that doesn't have all of the functionality, or even perhaps using bits of kit that don't have any of that functionality, then quite clearly the value derived from the course is going to be far less. Other considerations might well be the number of simulators per student. There's a great variety on this across centres. There seems to be an inconsistent approach. You're going to get better training experience if you have one-to-one time on a simulator. You're going to spend more time using the radar system, using the plotter system, and making the most of that time. There will be some exercises where you come together as, say, a bridge team, and that can be really valuable, but really the majority of your course, in our opinion, should be one-to-one on those bridge simulators, and that's what we've been told by the MCA. Another factor that you might consider as relevant, more so maybe if you're an organisation than an individual, is the VAT status of the business. Many of the maritime colleges are not VAT registered because of the nature of their organisations, so therefore that can make a massive difference as to the overall cost of training if VAT isn't a part of the invoice that you actually receive. So there are a variety of things to consider. I think make sure you spend time looking at the websites of the centres you're considering. Make sure you chat to those within the booking team, and I'm sure any centre worth its salt would arrange you time with the lead instructor from their SSNR team to have a chat through what the course is about in a bit more detail and its suitability to you or those within your organisation. The level of people attending the SSNR course can range from RWA Powerboat Level 2 through to Yachtmaster Offshore. If someone's working on a workboat coded vessel or under light duty workboat certificate and they're at Level 2 level, then I think it's fair to say the SSNR course can be really quite full on for them. And our recommendation would be that as a minimum they get the RWA Day Skipper theory under their belt, and a good way to do that can be online, because that can be quite a quick way of doing it if they don't have the time to get into the classroom. It's not mandatory, and we have had people come from a level of RWA Powerboat Level 2, but they do find it pretty full on, because as you would imagine, when you're looking at some of the radar side of things, you're looking at Rule 19, operation of vessel in restricted visibility, and therefore there's a need to be able to sort of understand that, or you certainly benefit from understanding it as you progress through that course. But it's not a mandatory requirement, but if you can do day skipper theory, that's a really good starting place.